Great. So, Sarfraz, thank you very much for having me host your panel today. It's an honor. It's a pleasure. You always put on great events. I appreciate it so much. And today we're going to step outside my comfort area of crypto and blockchain and talk about hemp and CBD, and especially the breakthroughs, the practices, and the best trends in the market. And we have an expert panel here today. And so what I want to do is go briefly around the room and ask you, first of all, a 1 minute introduction. Who are you? What is your background? And is it a logical background to what you do now? I guess I'll stop on my top row is Christopher. So I'll start with Christopher, then I'll go around.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Very happy to be here. My name is Christopher Hudalla. I'm the president and chief scientific officer of ProVerde Laboratories, based just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. My background is a doctorate in analytical chemistry, and ProVerde was one of the first laboratories in the United States to be ISO 17025 accredited for hemp testing and cannabis analytics.
Great. Robert?
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Byssz. I am the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer for RotaChrom, which is a purification equipment that we are offering. I joined the company a year ago, and our company is one of the biggest when it comes to liquid chromatography, specialized on various cannabinoids. That's what we do.
Excellent. Abhishek.
Yeah, hi, I'm Abhishek. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hempstreet. We're India's first and largest research to retail medical cannabis company. We are now in 24 states in India and in a little over 2,200 clinics that we've since our launch about 5 months ago. We tackle mass ailments in India, starting with our first product was aimed at menstrual cramps. We're looking to basically change the lives of a couple of 100 million Indians that have basically had no respite, no pain relief, and a bunch of mass ailments that have been overlooked by other people. Also, taking the fight to the opioid crisis that's looming in India with cannabis. We've recently won the top, I'll finish this. We recently won this is more relevant to the Western market, the top biotech grant in India, first ever by a medical cannabis company for a global first transdermal delivery technology for cannabinoids that we wish to bring to the rest of the world.
Awesome. And for your audience, my name is Jamil Hasan. I'm a podcast host of the Irish Tech News. I'm an author, crypto investor, and I recently joined the Global Hemp Association, and I look forward to that, learning more. So we're going to wait for Rogesh to come. When he comes, I'll have him introduce himself, but I'll ask the first question now. The hemp and CBD industry currently faces, numerous challenges and trends and all that. It's a new industry, well, not new, but it's $20 billion, and I think it's going to go up to a few trillion in the near future. But in any nascent industries, there are issues with, as they relate to producers, R&D, regulatory, and patient care. Well, specifically to healthcare, right? But as far as producers, I'll put this question out there. What are some of the biggest challenges facing the hemp producers today? And how can they best navigate the space?
I'll start. My perspective is certainly more U.S. based. That question has many facets to it. If you look at the cultivation side of producing in the U.S. with no significant federal oversight to production, that leads to significant challenges. Which crop is legal can vary depending on which state you're in. That is under the USDA starting to be a little bit more harmonized, and I envision that to be a little bit more synchronized in the future. But today, there's still significant differences from one state to another in terms of what is considered a hot plant, what is considered legal. Across the United States, that's 0.3% THC. But how you measure it, how you dry the plant, and how you do your testing process can have dramatic impact on whether that comes hot or not. And because those protocols are different from state to state, that has the discrepancy. Then in the production standpoint, when you extract the plant and create a hemp extract, by definition, that hemp extract has to be federally legal at less than 0.3% THC. Well, that doesn't happen. When you extract the plant, you concentrate the THC. And so technically, all hemp extracts go through a period where they are illegal to work with till then you formulate. So there's a lot of challenges with how the U.S. has chosen to regulate and consider products legal, and that provides significant challenges to producers.
Indeed, and let me just connect there. So as our company is very active in North America, we have achieved the biggest growth there in the last 3 years, seeing how the regulation is changing and seeing the high expectations about a true federal regulation. That makes it super exciting. But when I'm seeing our customers and they want to come to the European Union, they want to export their goods to the European Union, then comes the next bunch of challenges, right? Because the regulation in the European Union is completely different. Now we have a leading example, which is the United Kingdom, with the novel food process that they just started for that. And we are super excited. We are involved in quite some of those steps in the process. And if you just look at some of the numbers, like more than 400 companies with 400 samples, they started the novel food application a few months ago when it was kicked off. Now, as we speak, according to my latest knowledge, there are only around 100 of them still on the table. The rest were rejected due to quite some issues that Christopher, you just mentioned about, how you measure it and what is allowed here and what is not. So according to my information, there's only 100 of them anymore on the list, and European Union is still lagging behind in the regulation, but most likely it's going to be novel food. And then in Europe, I believe when you look at it, when I look at my discussions with our customers, everything is about pharma. Everything is about medical usage. Everything is about API grade purity. And there, extraction is not anymore a solution. Whenever you come to THC, which is now the hottest topic in Europe, but most likely you guys have much more knowledge on that, the medical use of that and high purity API grade, which is needed by the pharmaceuticals. That's going to be a huge challenge for a huge portion of the industry. But whoever does it, they're going to be lucky with that, for sure.
Great. Abhishek?
Well, I mean, in India, isolates are illegal to begin with. The hemp industry is kind of at its infancy. The 0.3% THC issue, even with kind of legalization of cultivation in several states, it hasn't really taken off because, again, keeping it to below that, given climatic conditions and generally the kind of the long way to go in terms of seed science. It's just, I can only comment on the medical cannabis side, which is thriving and without much restriction which is under the purview of Ayurveda, where cannabis is just one active ingredient. It's not the be all and end all as it is in most other markets. So I don't see the same problems because we aren't there yet, and maybe we won't be.
Got it. William, to mention, pharma, you mentioned seed science and different sciences, and R&D, research and development. What is and what should be the most important initiatives right now in the R&D process? Is it design? Is it technology? Is it something else? How do you see that?
So I mean, we're focusing on obviously the grant that we won is for a transdermal technology. I can't really go too much into detail because we're in patent stuff that's in process. So I think a lot of the innovation around cannabis should also look at the environment, right? I mean, like if you look at delivery mechanisms that you see, elsewhere in the world, vapes and all that stuff ends up, even if it's transdermal patches or whatever, all of it ends up, in the soil or in landfills or whatever. I think there's that level that as the industry is, kind of growing so fast and there's so much money and so much about gaining market share and creating a large size industry. I think it's one of those that needs to on day one, understand the potential impact of the environmental impact of packaging, of everything that goes into it, the format of delivery. So I think there should be a lot more research and a lot more, IP around that. And in general, I think the whole industry, right, is still kind of, I would say, I wouldn't call it faith-based, but it's, if you look at in Germany, the most reimbursed product in medical is dronabinol, right? And they prescribe it for sleep, anxiety, and appetite. That's like the oldest use of cannabis, right? I mean, I don't It's Germany. Come on, like so. So I think there has to be a lot more. I would say globally, there'll probably be two streams. One is the holistic, and one is the extremely research. And I think there needs to be more, more of both, I would say.
And if I may add there, I think when it comes to research, so my understanding is when I look at the commercial market, and Christopher, you might have much more insights on that, but when I spent like 3 weeks in North America recently, I just came back 2 weeks ago. I visited many of our customers and prospects, and like what I just learned from one of them, and I really appreciated that, he was saying that the whole market seems like it's a bunch of flavors of the month is built on each other. So like 12 months ago, everybody was speaking about CBG and how cool that is. And then November, Christopher, you will know this much better. November was CBN. If I recall it right, our discussions in January were all about, guys, do you have a method for data 8, data 9, and data 10? And now everybody wants CBT. And, then I go online, even our chemists who are, we have many of the installations around the globe, they very much know we have like 11 chemists working constantly, not just on legal cannabinoids, but on other, because we work in pharmaceutical companies on other molecules too. But then, you start to research, like, why is CBT now? If you go for CBT, it's like $55,000 to $70,000 a kilo now in North America. So then you start to Google it, and you will find that Dr. Arsoli from the University of Mississippi, he had his research on CBT like 35 years ago. So what is this hype? Why it just went from nothing to $70,000 a kilo in a week? And now, frankly, I mean, every second phone call of ours is, guys, do you have a method for CBT? We want CBT. It's a crazy industry, I believe. And then the research behind it started so much time ago, like this CBT research by Dr. Arsoli. It's like 35 years old. Still, it is not finished. If you want to find out why exactly people are hyping now CBT, the only true medical research, quality medical research you will find is 35 years old without a real conclusion.
Yeah, I think a lot of the challenge is that research in the U.S. Based on the Controlled Substance Act is very limited in terms of what can be done. And so a lot of research that involves cannabis is forbidden, especially at the university level. Universities, if they have any funding from the federal government, they just can't participate in that. And that really limits the amount of research that can be done. In terms of the flavor of the month, we do see that. Right now, CBC is a bit of a flavor of the month. We keep hearing about that. The worst one, which we might touch on later, is the Delta 8, the other THC isomers, which is just, and it's horrific what's being done. Oftentimes, the research that's being done isn't really research. It's garage people who are dabbling. And the research happens faster to create new delivery mechanisms, new formulations, before we can truly understand the safety or efficacy of those products or those delivery mechanisms. And so there's a significant amount of concern that is, for my part at least, when the research happens faster than we can validate or ensure the safety of the people who are consuming this.
So true.
Great. So I'm in crypto, so I know what the flavor of the month is really well.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I want to ask about that. How much of an impact has the role of institutions on ESG investing played a role in this advancement of the 35-year of 0 to 70K? How what's the institutional impact of the ESG investing on your space right now?
I'm not sure. I'm really not sure about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know either.
Yeah,
that goes into the R&D. So
yeah,
and it's fascinating, I find. So as far as regulation, then institutions are shifting to regulation. What do you see some of the regulatory issues? Because that's a big issue, right? What's the regulatory issues facing the hemp industry, and how can we tackle them, head first? to ensure proper, quality and governance in the space.
So if I may start, I think, us being, global and having our coverage in China, in India, Europe, North America, South America, we were so much hoping for the World Health Organization to make their vote at the end of last year. That was expected to happen last year, and then they came together in Vienna, in Austria, earlier this year. We were hoping that there were 5 questions for them to decide, and they actually just decided on one, which has been long outstanding. They voted on one. They voted yes. So many of us started to celebrate, like, oh wow, finally some regulation is coming. And then they didn't even speak about the other 4 or 5, and it's not even on the agenda anymore. So I think the biggest challenge is it's very much unregulated. Christopher, you already mentioned the Delta 8 topic, which is crazy. When I was in some of the states, THC and everything related to this topic is illegal, and then you see huge D8 signs all around the street. You can buy D8. It's just crazy. Regulation is very much needed. I believe I'm a big supporter of, let's regulate it so it's clear for everyone what is legal, what is not. Hopefully the regulation should be based on research, and I think we will be much more protected, all of us. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm eager for the day when the FDA jumps in with some level of regulation. Right now, from the cultivation standpoint, that is governed in the United States by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the USDA, but their oversight is ended at the moment that plant is harvested. So once the plant is harvested and it's deemed or tested to be compliant, they no longer have any regulatory oversight. And after that point, it goes into a Wild West free-for-all. There's no requirements for testing for the most part. A few states have implemented some, but what constitutes a safe product for consumers? There's no guidelines to do that. The Delta 8 is a phenomenon, is probably one of the most critical in that we've tested 5,000 some products of Delta 8, and they are all heavily, heavily contaminated with synthetic reaction byproducts, with reagents left over from processing. I haven't seen one that I would give to a family member. They have been horribly contaminated. And there's nobody that's shutting this down and saying, wait a minute, you can't use consumers as guinea pigs for these novel chemicals, which we don't know what they are even. When we test them, we oftentimes see 20 to 30 compounds that are not naturally occurring in cannabis. What are they? I don't know. Are they safe? I don't know. And so it gives me a significant amount of concern that there is nobody in the U.S. that's stepping up and saying, we are going to regulate this, other than we're starting to see small pockets of state by state. But that makes another problem because now you have inconsistencies from one state to the next state. It's very challenging.
Yeah, so, in our case, it's quite different. I think because it's under the Ayurvedic purview and because it's largely collected produce, most of the raw material that you get is naturally occurring. It's not over-engineered like you see in a lot of places. And the fact that cannabis is just one active ingredient in the whole concoction, we don't, in fact, you can either see it as being very advanced or not very advanced. But as a result, it's tightly controlled by the excise department, by the government. You only source from them. And primarily because the contribution of cannabis is just 1/16 of what's going out the door, we don't have, the kind of risk that you see in supposedly more advanced markets, right? Because, you don't know the level of engineering. It's not natural. It's not, you don't know what you've done to make something else, right? So I think in our case, I would say regulation for us was always around being able to make sure that you could track what went, what went out the door from raw material to the doctor, to make sure there was no overprescription, to make sure a doctor dispensed it, to, stuff that didn't at Hempstreet, we had to do it. We deployed a blockchain-based solution to make sure that even it would protect against even our own greed, because it's very easy to sell this thing online. So I think for us, the way I look at regulation for us is on that last mile to make sure that you are trying to avert the opioid crisis, but not by creating another off-label, mass industry that's completely unregulated.
Where you said the magic word for me there, and that was blockchain. How do you, men, feel that technology can be applied to ensure the supply chain is clean and those chemicals don't end up, in your production, supply?
So maybe I'm the best place to, or at least from the equipment side, to answer that. I think the answers are out there. I mean, pharmaceuticals have long been regulated about, what your production process is. We have regulations like the Pharma GMP standard, or I would be even happy to have at least a food GMP certificate on many of the production lines. I think that would already have. And again, obviously, I have to raise my hand. Our equipment is a pharmaceutical grade equipment, so we are just there. Like, I just see that in our daily report, like 30% of the production now is cleaning the data aid from what you just mentioned, Christopher. There's tons of dirty material out there, but it's doable. It would be doable if you wouldn't allow the producers to play around the rules and to bend the rules. I think that's what somebody said, that they are just bending the rules. The idea is clear. Our food is produced throughout a very strict process. Even the cosmetics are produced through a very strict process. And let me just give you this example. Now I am in Budapest, in Hungary, where it is illegal to produce anything from hemp. It's legal to grow it, but it's not legal to produce like CBD oil or anything out of that. So what happens is, if I would have my mobile, go out on the street, go into the shop, which is on the other side of the street, that's going to be a CBD shop. I walk in there, and there's going to be CBD on the shelf, which is illegal. So guess what? CBD as a natural extract, CBD as a food supplement is illegal in the country. So when you buy any of that, that's going to be mouthwash. That's what it is. So the labeling will tell you, do not swallow. Just 3 droplets to your glass of water, then flush, and then just split it out. Don't swallow it. Guess what?
No, for us, it's the same. We have isolates are illegal, but you have a lot of people peddling like hemp seed oil as CBD. You have a lot of people importing and selling it. The key is really, end of the day, you have to be kind of patient upwards, right? If you're trying to solve a particular problem for a patient, I think that if you put the patient in the center, you tend to make better decisions about his health, right? So if you put a product in the center, which is the issue, right? Again, I said it in the last panel, you had so much venture capital, so much overcapitalized Canadian industry that completely lopsided the perception of what cannabis industry is, right? In India, I had people come to me and say, "Oh, isn't it pre-legalization? You can't use cannabis in India." I said, "No, CBD is illegal. Isolates are illegal, but we do have a thriving. If your idea is to solve the problem of the patient, there is a thriving federally legal, federally controlled method to deliver cannabis. But the issue is that products have now been superseded patients, right? So just like, I need to sell CBD, or I'm not in the cannabis industry, and that's without having any ideas to what the market needs or what's legal or what the patient needs, you try to push products. So when I say India is a impossible market if you're trying to push your products, but it's a phenomenal market if you're trying to invest in the industry.
Yeah, and I just want to add in regard to blockchain, it's not very well developed here in the U.S. for this purpose, but cannabis is a consumer product, goes through so many hands, from the initial farmer. Oftentimes, once it's harvested, it might go to a broker, and then it's sold to a processor who extracts it, who makes something where he's selling it wholesale to somebody who's going to make a tincture. And so it goes through so many hands, and at each step there's an opportunity to ensure safety. or to prevent contaminants from coming in. And blockchain would be a really ideal way of tracking a product from the field all the way to the final consumer, so that any safety information, any processing information, what solvents was it exposed to, all of that could be captured as part of a product history in a blockchain format that's secure. To me, that would be the future, and it would be ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though we are I would say our market has a lot less steps, because you only buy your raw material from the excise department, which is the government. You're not allowed to cultivate. It goes into our CGMP factory that we have. And then from there, it goes directly to doctors. We don't work with distributors or anybody else. We've preemptively done this to make sure that if we're building an industry from scratch, it better be built for the future. So we're actually one of the biggest blockchain deployments for our partner, just judging by the number of clinics that we have on it. I think for us, the key was, it's very, very good points as the cultivation part gets liberalized, as a lot more steps come in, I think it's critical that you work backwards and you have all the steps captured. In our case, it was about, we didn't want to be the next opioids, right? We wanted to for us, it was about dispensation. But again, absolutely agree. If it's something that's a Schedule E1 substance, it's highly regulated, it warrants this kind of tracking. We don't have to do it, but we do it because we know that's where the industry should be.
Great. So I have two questions now. One I can pivot to either one. I'll go to the patient one first. From a patient perspective, how could the application and distribution of hemp CBD and the emerging technologies together be applied to improve patient healthcare and well-being, instead of receiving laced or tainted goods?
Well, certainly having a high degree of testing requirements. So we see a lot of pesticides in product, which is a huge concern. So ensuring that products are safely formulated, that would be a huge thing. In terms of patient delivery, we have seen in the last year the emergence of these water-soluble nanoemulsions. And there's some pretty significant evidence that shows that these nano formulations have increased efficacy in some of the research that I've seen. And so that is, I think that's going to continue to be a growing trend, is to see more of these nano emulsions of the cannabinoids.
Robert, from a patient perspective, what are your thoughts?
So I believe from the patient perspective, what I'm seeing is the lack of the medical research. I would love to see really what is the benefit of the various microformulations, if there is any. I hope there is, but I haven't seen too much research on that. Research would be my best friend, and that would tell me what is needed there. Technically, what I'm seeing now is, from the patient perspective, what we are doing as a purification company, technically all our effort is about protecting the patients. Like on the American Chemist Association meeting the last year before COVID, we just won a poster because we just said that, guys, instead of speaking about the flavor of the month, we just managed to take out 115 kinds of pesticides from CBD. And yep, it was uploaded by the chemist. If you ask me how many leads we are receiving today about, hey guys, you are the only one who can take out all the pesticides from CBD, none. That's the horrible part.
Hasn't anybody written to you saying, this is like when instant noodles in India, they said, oh, there's too much lead in instant noodles. I was like, there's lead in instant noodles? Like, I've been eating that stuff my whole childhood. Like, I've been eating lead. How is lead allowed? How is that a permissible amount of lead in food? Like, what's going on? Like, So I would say that would kind of be my reaction. What?
Correct. So you would be shocked, when we did this test, we just bought off-the-shelf CBD products, and we started to test them. And then we found, like, oh my God, everything. I think our record holder is 117 different types of pesticides in the shelf product from North America. It was. Well, we were proud. We could remove all of them, but, like, guys, shouldn't there be a process?
Well, so one thing that's
now our wild collected cannabis doesn't sound so bad, right? I mean, it's growing in nature. I'm sure it's better than most of the other stuff that's out there, right?
So, Christopher,
one of the things that's a little bit ironic in the United States is that certainly in the marijuana sector, product that is contaminated with pesticides in most states is not a candidate for remediation. So it's not allowed to remove those pesticides under most state guidelines. And partly that would be only because the regulators don't understand that technology and ability exists. And just because it's contaminated doesn't mean it needs to be disposed of. But unfortunately, our regulators oftentimes regulate with not a full picture, not a full understanding of current technologies.
Wow. So earlier you said, talked about bending the rules, right? So how do we either bend the rules in our favor or help them to create rules that will help the patients?
So if I just quickly, I will shorten that. I personally and our organization in North America, we are, and in Europe, we are super active in whatever lobby we can just get close to, the Hemp Roundtable, the Hemp Association. We are trying to support everyone who is advocating, the customer first, the patient first mindset, making sure that there is research behind whatever we are offering to the customers, to the patients, and making sure that it's clean. I think clean is the main word for me there. That's our steps. We are supporting anyone who is on the side of research and making it clean.
Yeah, I totally agree that bending the rules or helping, oftentimes the rules aren't made yet, and so they're in the creation process oftentimes, and getting involved as much as possible with these organizations, it can be a little exhausting because there are so many of these organizations that are looking at different aspects, testing or cultivation, and helping regulators create them. But oftentimes there's so many voices or so many different opinions. Sometimes it's hard to get a point across. But certainly involvement and a lot of communication is critical, as is the research. You're totally right that the research is a critical component of that, and I would love to see more government-funded or sponsored research permissible for all aspects, whether it's cultivation, processing, remediation, and then the therapeutics or the efficacy. What is the cannabinoid of the month actually a good thing to be pushing? That research is desperately needed.
Yeah. I think even in our case, I mean, we've got this trove of traditional knowledge in Ayurveda and 400-500 formulations in a pharmacopoeia. Even when our first product that we launched for menstrual cramps, we didn't just take it off the shelf because it would pass through an Ayurveda. We did, obviously, there was a 2,000 clinic, I would say, trial or a test, and then based on that data is the data that we collected. Obviously, it wasn't a formal clinical trial. We didn't have to do any of that. But I think I'm always firmly for that. I mean, if you can't just, it's very important that, kind of eventually efficacy and research. And the good part is, despite isolates being illegal in India, we have won a grant for a CBD-based product. So I think the government's all ears, and I think research should go on all forms in everything all the time. And what gets commercialized, sure, you can say yes or no, but research should just be completely liberalized. Just research on whatever you want.
True.
Great. So what you said so far is a question: who is doing the research right now? Is there anybody out there doing the industry level research, and who are they, and what are their
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So for instance, companies like ourselves, we are joining efforts with universities. We have a joint research project going on with one of the biggest German universities. 3 or 4 topics we are doing that. We have now one of our equipments in the University of Mississippi, doing a joint research there. So technically, if the regulators are not stepping up, then the companies will step up. I believe at least that's how we operate. So we as a for-profit organization, we are with our chemists and with our technology, we are joining forces with universities and we are supporting the research. Well, we are just a small company, but that's what we can do.
We work with the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, the biotechnology departments of BIRAC. The CSIR is the apex research body in India. They've, especially in phyto, they're one of the best in the world. With the lab up in Jammu, they've got a couple of thousand patents, and we work with top people. That's a good part about the state-owned enterprises in India. They're very supportive of startups. They allow you to, we do probably millions of dollars worth of research, but highly subsidized, because they are encouraging companies like us to create IP, right? For a country with pretty much all the mass ailments in mass, it's very important that we're able to create domestic research, and we get a lot of help from CSIR. In fact, we're working with them on the transdermal delivery technologies we're working on right now, which we hope to bring globally. So yeah, in India, there's a lot of support from that, and we were the first recipient of the BIRAC award, first ever cannabis company. But that's a research on whatever, and with the government.
Yeah, in the United States, the research that's being done is a little bit on the small scale from what I would hope would be happening. As Robert said, it's oftentimes funded by small companies who have their own interests in it, and that's fantastic. Unfortunately, we sit here in the U.S. and look at envy to Canada and Europe and other countries that have more permissible research programs that are specifically around cannabis. Israel has, some phenomenal institutions where they've, taken on some fundamental questions. We do start to see a little bit of that happening at the university level here in the U.S., but it's pretty small, and it's very limited. There's so many hoops that an investigator has to pass through in order to get approvals to work with this plant that's been around for thousands of years. It's just hurdle after hurdle for some bureaucracy nonsense, and that's unfortunate.
Got it. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is, in the U.S. you have, state by state, it's very specific, and then globally, blockchain, which is completely decentralized and flattened, and everything's on the same level. So, what's the sweet spot as far as being able to talk from the pocket from the pocket level to the flattened level? Where should we be playing right now in the industry to move things, forward? What's that space?
Many people are thinking about it, I believe. Maybe that's why everybody believes in every quarter about the flavor of the quarter or flavor of the month. I'm not sure.
I say by and large, medical cannabis people seem to be, like I said in the last panel too, seem to be pretty cool people. And this is kind of a chance for us to the future is integrative, right? There's a trove of indigenous knowledge across the board, even in China and Korea and Japan, where in Japan, it's amazing. They have an old history with hemp and cannabis, but today, cannabis is treated, if you have to supply CBD to Japan, it goes to some crazy standards that very few people can actually supply. But again, there's such a trove of, because the plant has been associated with humanity for so long, with so many cultures. And now the science is, there's a lot of investment in the science of it. I think there's a chance to kind of bring that all together. I don't think there's one way. And I think there's a chance. The future is integrative, right? But with COVID, you realize that stuff that you've been taking as a painkiller, was suddenly going to harm you now, right? You didn't realize, or for women, for example, they were taking pills for dysmenorrhea and for severe menstrual cramps 4,000 times in their lifetime, and that could damage your kidneys. You didn't know that there was a natural alternative to it. So I think there's all these realizations that have happened, or that you can't take aspirin when you're breastfeeding, right? So I have an 8-month-old, so I know all this stuff now. But and so I think. Yeah. So I don't breastfeed, but still, I'm part of that process. But I think the idea is it's still kind of very new, and I think the future is kind of integrative. You can't dismiss one form of medicine because it's supposedly primitive or very, whereas even in the most advanced markets, there are so few highly researched products in this sector, right? So I think it's a chance for us to all work together. Blockchain, I think, is critical, irrespective, right? Because you have raw material that passes through so many hands, as Christopher said. So blockchain is not location specific, right? So you can deploy it even if you have state-wise restriction. It's still scalable. That's a good thing about blockchain, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not state dependent. It's not anything. As long as those indicators are monitored, no matter where you are, then you can.
I think we lost him.
I think we just lost him in the middle of the sentence. Yep.
Yeah.
Abhishek, I think we lost him. Anyway, there's an interesting question. Abhishek, if you're there, please log in again. And I have a question from Peter Miles. Again, he's talking about the blockchain aspect. He's saying blockchain isn't very environmentally friendly. There are alternatives such as Cardano that use significantly less power. So does this business of Hemp wants to be promoting blockchain? Because Hemp talks about, maybe I think what Peter wants to know is that Hemp promotes environmental friendly uses and solutions. And blockchain, some people say, isn't environmentally friendly because it uses a lot of energy, which is not correctly true, because I've been in blockchain for the last 6 years. And I know that there are ways where you can significantly work on a very friendly manner on the blockchain part. So anybody wants to take that question for Peter? Does Hemp industry want to promote blockchain on this?
I didn't. Yeah, I just sorry. Question. What's the question again? Sorry. Was that?
Yeah, Abhishek, Peter Miles has asked a question that blockchain isn't a very environmentally friendly process. So there are alternatives such as Cardano, which uses less power. So does the hemp business?
No, I think you're confusing. I think you're confusing blockchain and Bitcoin, right? So the blockchain remains. I think
that is probably what my answer to it would be.
Yeah. So I can't.
Mining a crypto is a totally different thing. Blockchain is very environmentally friendly.
Yeah.
So that was the question which had come up.
No matter, I'll say this again. No matter what happens, no matter what coins come and go, blockchain is here to stay. Blockchain is amazing. I think it's very different from dabbling in coins and all the speculative stuff that's happening. There's a ton of plus Cardano and Cardano's ADA, Cardano and the Ethereum blockchain. Okay, there's a bunch of ways that you can issue crypto, but I think blockchain is here to stay, and that's it's very different from Bitcoin.
Of course, and as you guys rightly said, that blockchain is definitely can be used in the hemp industry as far as the supply chain is concerned, traceability is concerned, and transparency is concerned. I mean, blockchain has various uses.
Listen, it's a regulated substance. There's a ton of greed. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of gray, if you want. I think. Yeah, and we're humans, right? I think blockchain is definitely the answer.
I have been doing blockchain conferences for 5 years now. Now, my point to the people in general, the audience, I would say that the crypto trading which is happening and the speculation and the greed which goes along with it, that is not supposed to happen. It's a side effect of the whole blockchain thing. Okay? A crypto is basically a token or a coin for a payment to be made on a particular blockchain server. It is not for individual retailers to be trading on it and speculating and greed on it. So blockchain, yes, definitely is here to stay. It is a very good form of which can help in the transparency and the traceability of any product or any industry. Back to you, Jamil.
And cannabis. I mean, and cannabis is prone to a lot of greed. It's the latest. It's in fashion. There's a lot of capital that's been earmarked for it. There's a lot of things that you can do with it, considering it was illegal for quite some time. There's a big recreational market. So I think there's an insane amount of THC now in recreational products, which is it's just crazy what's happening there. So yeah, with all these things, we can't be trusted, right? So you really need something that ties it all together in a
Sorry guys,
no problem.
Jamil, we are a bit tight for time today. Can you just close off the session? I'm so
Sure.
sorry about it.
No problem. If I go to Whole Foods and eat it and pick an apple out and try to eat that, I want to make sure that it's healthy and clean and I'm eating the right thing, right? So, I want to do the same thing with hemp and CBD. So I appreciate everybody's time. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. It's been a great panel. I wish everybody the best and thank you very much. One word is, for the future, you have one word to pick for people who are thinking about or want to be in hemp and CBD. What would that be? How do you feel about being in the industry? Being it's excited.
Well, pioneering. I think it's amazing. It's there's so much to do. There's so much new stuff.
My one word would be responsibility.
And mine is clean.
Thank you very much.